everybody, welcome to EduMatch. Thank you so much for joining us. So speaking of EduMatch, did you know you could be the featured person of the day? Just go to our site at edumatch.org and look for the big sign up button on the top right hand side. You can't miss it. Fill it out. It might take a while to get to you, but don't worry, because in the meantime, we will tweet out your blog if you have an RSS feed that we can find. We will add you to the Voxer group. There'll also be an automatic email coming to you so you can add yourself. And you will also be added to the awesome table of EduMatchers so people can look for you as they filter by interest, geographic area, things of that nature. And you'll also be tagged as other people are featured if they come up as a match. So I'm super excited today to talk with our awesome panelists. We have, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 amazing panelists. And tonight we're going to be talking about empathy. So we're just going to kind of go down the line and introduce ourselves. We'll go from my left to my right. So we're going to start first with Desiree.
Hello, everyone. Coming to you from outside of a public library. How are you doing? My name is Desiree Alexander. I am the founder CEO of EducatorAlexander.com at Educator Alexander Consulting at EducatorAlexander.com and the North Louisiana Director of Apple for Louisiana.
Awesome. So great to have you on here. All right. Awesome. We're going to go next to Janae.
Hi, everyone. I'm Janae Irwin. I currently live in Huntsville, Alabama, and I am the head of educator innovation at Flipgrid. And I can't wait to get started with this conversation about empathy.
Awesome. So glad to have you on panel, Janae. All right. Next, we're going to go to Katie.
Hi guys, I'm Katie McNamara, high school teacher librarian out in California. I also teach adjunct for Fresno Pacific University.
Very cool. So glad to have you on here with us, Katie. All right, next up we have Michael.
Hey, I am Mike Drezik. I am coming to you from Buffalo, New York. I am a K-12 District Tech Integration Specialist, TOSA. For Lakeshore Central School District.
Sweet. It's great to have you on here. So thank you for joining us, Michael. And last but not least, we have Terrence.
I am Terrence White, and I come from Chicago, Illinois. And I am a 7th grade science teacher. And I've been doing it for 7 years. I look forward to having this conversation with you all.
Great. Thank you so much, Terrence, and great to have you on panel. So we have some amazing educators, as y'all can see. So tonight we're going to be talking about empathy. So just wanted to say that this episode has been scheduled for several weeks, if not months. However, tonight the topic is extremely timely. So there was a bit of a pivot in the questions. We'll still get to the driving question that initially inspired this episode, but just kind of widening the lens. We want to talk a little bit about empathy in more general terms, in more global terms as well. So there's 4 questions. So on Twitter, the hashtag is EduMatch. So I'm about to open up my participate and check on that in a second. So we invite you to chime into the conversation, anyone who is watching right now. So you can either chime in on the YouTube live page, or you can chime in on Twitter with the hashtag EduMatch. So the very first question for tonight is to our panelists, what is your reflection on the general state of empathy in today's world? So anyone who wants to chime in on that can feel free to go ahead.
I'll jump in, Sarah. When it comes to the state of empathy, I think it's more so of a question of understanding what truly empathy is. I think there is always a confusion between empathy and sympathy. And so you know, you can be very sympathetic to a situation, but it's a different level to really empathize. And so, you know, I think our world has the capability, especially with technology, to really learn deeply about someone else's situation. But it's not until you walk inside someone else's shoes that you can really empathize. But, you know, we can come closer together with technology. It's a matter if we want to do it or not now.
Yeah, totally. I definitely want to piggyback on what you say in terms of like being connected to one another. I know that it's been like it's opened my world for me, just getting to know people like all of you on panel with the help of technology. So absolutely, great. Who else would like to chime in on this one?
Well, this is Desiree. I was going to say pretty much the exact same thing that Janae had said, and yes, people who don't quite understand what empathy is, and they think it's I think a lot of people think it's more of giving an excuse to someone or giving an excuse to their behavior, their situation. And that's not what it is at all. It's just trying to understand a different viewpoint, trying to understand a different side to a story, and trying to really dig a little bit deeper in yourself and to say, even if I'm not in that situation, even if I don't quite understand that situation, but what is that situation? So just kind of taking a step back to understand that I don't know what that situation is, or I don't know how it feels to be, in that situation. However, I want to understand a little bit more. So just quite understanding empathy, I think, is a big thing.
Yeah, totally. So definitely knowing that there are other sides and wanting to understand. So definitely agree with that. Great. Anyone else? All right, Katie.
Oh, go ahead, Kate. Sorry.
Okay, totally agree with what's been said, but I think what I would really love to see is that our students have an inner desire to want to be empathetic and have that desire to understand people that they share space with, even at their school site, the people that they live and breathe with, and also those that are in another country, so that we have a better understanding of one another. It's hard to hate someone you know. So if we use the technology that we have and get to know each other, the empathy, I think, would increase, and then it's just a better world for all of us. I think that's a huge win.
Absolutely. That was very interesting. I like how you said that the need to want to be empathetic, because it seems like now there's I mean, not from everywhere, but we do see some apathy, and unfortunately that's not helpful. So wanting to be empathetic is definitely a good first step. Great. All right, Terrence, we'll come next to you.
What I was going to say was just piggyback off of everybody else's responses is empathy has to be taught at a very young age. It has to start from, if they don't want to necessarily get it from home, but they may, as teachers, we have to model what empathy looks like. And I like what Janae said, there's empathy and then there's sympathy. And I think a lot of people mix those meanings up. So it is important that we're modeling what it looks like as educators, because at home, depending on the home situation, they may not be getting the empathy modeled at home. So it's important as teachers that we're modeling what it looks like in our classrooms and in our whatever we're doing in education.
Absolutely. So the need to model is very important. Great. All right, Mike.
Yeah, I really love what everyone's saying here tonight. And one of the things that I, relate empathy to is perspective, just looking at something from a different perspective and being able to understand where someone else is coming from, taking a step back and putting yourself in their shoes. And I like how how you mentioned that it gets confused with sympathy sometimes. And I think sometimes, the students, sometimes we don't give them enough credit for how empathetic that they are. We see it sometimes in our own schools towards each other. And I think that's where, like as connected educators and being connected on a global scale, if we can somehow find a way to bring that into our classrooms so that the students can really understand students that are different from them, and as well when they see the similarities, I mean, it really helps them develop that sense of empathy. And I like how we touched on modeling and how important that is, but really just to change your perspective and be willing to look at something through someone else's eyes and how it might feel, because it's tough to understand, and it's a skill that definitely gets developed over time, and it takes time.
Absolutely. So I see, Desiree, you want to say something else?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one more thing. When we talk about empathy, I think a lot of times we think about people being empathetic to our own story or our own background. And what we fail to do sometimes is to actually open up our own empathy to people that do not think as we think. We think, oh, you need to be empathetic to the right side because I'm the right side. So you need to be empathetic to what I'm saying and but sometimes we fail to be empathetic to someone who may not feel the same way that we feel.
That's a great point. Just to kind of piggyback off of what you're saying, and there was a fantastic discussion in RJ League chat, Restorative Justice. I think that they're having a chat tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. But they had a great discussion, especially in a Voxer group, about dehumanization. And I feel like it ties very well into what we're talking about tonight. So absolutely, just wanted to piggyback off of that. So I do have a follow-up question for the panel. So anyone who wants to jump in. So we are, I'm hearing a lot of you say that there's a difference between empathy and sympathy. So what would you say is a difference between the two? So Terrence, I see your hand up.
I don't know why I'm raising my hand like it's school. But I was going to say that personally, I think the difference between sympathy and empathy is you feel bad. Empathy would be you feel the person, what they're going through in their shoes, but you want to take action on how to help them or those individuals get through it. If that makes any sense. Sympathy, you feel bad, no action. Empathy, you feel for the person, but you want to help them through it.
Cool. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Katie, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the big difference is putting some skin into it. You can be sympathetic and it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And it's like a one and done, where when you get like involved and you're making that connection, there's more effort that you do. There's a follow-up with the person, the individual, a why and a desire to make things a bit better.
Absolutely. And we see, we were smiling because you had someone photobombing a second ago. Absolutely. So yes, definitely. Any other thoughts on that?
I think just going a little deeper, it goes into the type of connection you have with someone. So relationships are a huge part of being empathetic. I'm like super smiling right now because I follow Katie and Michael. And this is my first time, being on a hangout with them. So I feel that deeper connection already. We've been Twitter buds for forever. And it's nice seeing Terrence again and Desiree again. And I've heard Terrence's story. And by me, I didn't know Terrence, but by hearing Terrence's story, it brought us closer together. So when Terrence now goes through something, I feel something different than what I felt before, because now we have a relationship with one another. So I truly feel like, especially with our students, in the wake of everything that is happening in our world, I truly believe if they are to the point where they really get to know one another, get to know the things that each other is going through, the things that they're carrying along with them day in and day out, they may react a little different to certain situations had they not had that relationship. So relationships are everything. Absolutely.
And I just wanted to piggyback off of that. There was a phrase that you used, deeper connections. And I love that phrase. There's definitely a difference between connecting with someone saying, hey, how you doing? How's your day? Oh, cool. Okay. Well, what do you think about blah, 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 blah. Right. And then moving on to the next thing. There's a difference between that and actually getting to know someone, getting to know what makes them tick, what they like, what they dislike, what they care about, what kind of music they listen to, what they do for fun, about their family. And just really getting to know one another is just, it allows us, I think, to have more empathy for one another and to have like conversations, difficult conversations sometimes, and to really embrace what the other person's saying, because if it's a stranger, then a lot of times the wall goes up if there's a disagreement. But when we get to see like, oh, this person's saying this because blah 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 happened in their life, then that is to me that makes a huge difference, and fostering that in our students as well. So shout out to Doug Tim, because he also made that remark in the EduMatch Boxer group. So all right, I'm gonna pop into Desiree.
And I just wanted to say, I think when we talk about sympathy, it's more surface level emotions. It's more just, I'm not really getting too deep into the situation, but I hope you feel better. It's more surface level, where empathy is humanizing the other person on the other side. They're not just an idea. They're not just a culture. They're not just a whatever, but you're actually humanizing them to where you can look at the connections between you two and go, you know what? We are more alike than I thought we were. So that's going to help me to empathize with what you're going through.
Absolutely. So humanizing the other person and not just them being an idea, like, them actually being someone like you, so absolutely. All right. So let's go next to Michael.
Yeah. I'm hearing relationships come up and, humanizing. And I think really it starts with a connection, and, how do you spark that connection? I think we have this technology at our fingertips to develop that empathy. We need to make those connections happen, and we need to kind of take the lead as educators to bring that into our classrooms, to make sure that those connections are happening. Obviously within the four walls of our classroom is so important. The relationships that the kids have with each other right in front of us, and then really reaching out beyond. I know this year, for example, we've connected our classrooms with students in Ghana and Australia and in South America, really all over the world, through something like Skype-a-thon. And just even though some of those weren't like deep cultivated connections, the students wanted more. And I think when they want more, there's the likelihood that they're going to develop that sense of empathy when they just really start to make that connection. And how do we really cultivate those connections so that they get deeper, like everyone's brought up here. So that's what I wanted to just chime in on.
All right. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. All right. And Terrence had something that he wanted to share as well.
I was going to share that with our current political climate in this country, a lot of people don't want to hear what the other side is saying. And it is just, our country is dividing more and more and more. And this skill of empathy could be a great skill that our politicians could use. No matter what side you are, it doesn't matter. Both sides could learn a piece of empathy, because it helps bring our country together instead of driving us apart. That's all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Let's go next to Katie.
Yeah, I wanted to just follow up on something that Michael touched on. I think as educators, our big role, besides just teaching them, math, science, and all that important stuff, is to have moments in the classroom that help them build those connections with each other, get those relationships so that empathy is happening within those four walls that they spend most of their day in.
Totally. All right. So passing it over now to Jernay.
So one thing I did want to share, of course, you guys know I'm all things Flipgrid, and Michael and Katie are really big Flipgrid users as well. But there is a grid that was created by a teacher in Australia named Bronwyn Joyce. Bronwyn is just simply amazing. And she started this grid by a simple question called what if? And so the what if grid, which has now turned into our global classroom because it's so many people adding to that grid now, it really puts students in the shoes of someone else, asking that simple question, what if? So whether the question was about being a refugee and having to pack overnight, what would you take? So for most kids, they're not going to think about that. That's not going to be the first thing they wake up and think about, but that's somebody else's reality. So the more opportunities that we have our kids really thinking deeply about what others are also going through in our world, I think, it's just simply amazing. Just what they can think and what they can contribute to the world. Another example, I was at camp in Madison, Alabama, And there was a biology teacher who wanted to connect her students to students in South Africa that are dealing with the water crisis, to really understand what is that like for them. It's one thing to hear it, but when you hear it from the source, that firsthand learning, it becomes more powerful, and students are going to take more action. Just like we mentioned earlier, being sympathetic, oh yeah, that's happening. Being empathetic, I want to do something about it. I want to contribute. So I think Michael also wants to share some other topics that maybe he was moved by, and also use with his students with our global classroom.
Well, I'll just chime in real quick. The grid is definitely taken off. It's amazing. And the topics on there, just to even go back and look at some of the past topics, I know a lot of them focus around the Sustainable Development Goals and the SDGs movement. And if just look to bring those into your classroom, I think is a huge step in developing empathy. To get students really realizing what they are. I mean, I'm kind of embarrassed to realize that I didn't even know what they were until only a couple of years ago. But there's a lot of topics around that on the grid. And like, for example, one of Dollar Street, I think, is a documentary. And one of the topics talks about, what if you only had $1 to live on per day? And then there was a video there that showed the people that really are living off of $1 per day, and I can't even relate to that in my own life. But to see it through other people's eyes is, and then to try to relate to it, it's powerful.
Absolutely. And the SDGs are amazing. And I was just typing in the chat that you're doing better than me. You said you found out about it a few years ago. I found out about it a few months ago, actually. But what's that, Terrence?
Let's find out right now. Where do I get to that? I want some of that.
Oh, yes. Okay, so that's a good question. One of us can Google it, and we'll find a link for you.
Throw the link in this chat.
Yep.
Absolutely. And then I'm going to throw it out there. If you go to the world's largest lesson or teachsdgs.org, both of those websites are a phenomenal resource, and some of them come with lesson plans ready to use and bring those conversations into your classroom.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and whatever resources we're finding, if we could also please tweet them out on Twitter with the hashtag EduMatch, that'd be great as well. So, so the SDGs, and I'm really, the more I learn about it, or them, I should say, the more that I just want to be a part of it. And I feel like, working together as a team, because these are for the whole world, so these are global goals. So working together as being part of a team, and that definitely also helps foster empathy. So I'm going to kick it over to Jernay.
Yeah, so as Michael was talking about, could you live on $1 a day? That would be a phenomenal lesson in a classroom that spans from just a moment in time. So I can see cross-curricular opportunities happening for students, and then also that empathy being built, and then also survival skills. You never know when your current situation may change. And I think for students who may not have gone through things like that, they may have a different lens when there's a child who's struggling or may not have the money for a field trip or something else. They'll have that empathy already built up to be able to do something. It's making me think also of the lesson from, I think it was 1968, the brown eye versus blue eye experiment. The day after Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. died. So a teacher in Iowa created an experiment in her classroom just so students really understood what racism was all about. So she gave them that experience. And so they looked at it differently than what they had heard about, because now they felt it. And so I would challenge any educators that are out here listening to really look at those sustainable goals and start creating some meaningful experiences for students to not only learn, but to connect with others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Terrence, were you about to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, her name is Jane Elliott.
Yes. So absolutely. So definitely lots of great conversation going on, and we're still on the first question. So so we're about to go to question 2. So I I can't remember exactly who said it. It might have been Michael. But somebody was saying about how our students already come in with with empathy lots of times, and trying like, oh my goodness, my words are like escaping me right now. But the question is, how could we help students leverage their empathy so that they can make a difference? So who would like to jump in with that question?
I'll jump in here just to start. I mean, I think we really, I mean, throw the term student voice around, and I think in this instance, it's really, but I think it'd be best to go to them and ask them, like, what problems do you see in your community, and just look at it from their eyes, see what they notice, see if it's in alignment with some of the things that we as adults notice, and maybe kind of take it from there. I mean, and with as far as PBL goes, I mean, there's a great opportunity right there to solve some problems local. And then if you can tie it back into the SDGs on a global scale and the global goals, I mean, I think that could be your launching point. But I think really just to ask the kids and find out from them.
All right, great point. Great point. All right, coming next to Janae.
Yeah, I think Michael hit the nail on the head, student voice. And before that, creating that safe space for students to be able to share their voice. And so there's been so many situations that could go one way or another, knowing what a student is coming to us with. But if they don't feel safe enough to communicate what they're going through, we'll never get there. So I think, coupled with student voices, creating those spaces within schools to let students know that, yes, we are all here. Yes, we are all different. We all have our own stories, and we are going to learn from each other. We learn best when we learn from each other. And so the more that we can get to that point where students feel comfortable in sharing those uncomfortable moments, I think the more they'll be able to share their voice to get to that next level.
Absolutely. All right. Going next to Terrence.
I was going to say, this week has fired me up with everything that's happened in Florida. And with that said, student voice is such a powerful tool because it is amazing seeing the students from Florida speak out and letting them drive this whole discussion about safety in schools. It has fired me up as an educator because sometimes it's better for us adults to get out of the way and let them speak because it's their experiences, it's their world, and their world is different than our world. It goes back to that empathy piece. Let them speak, let them share things that are going on. I know one of the things I do in my classroom, whenever there's a topic that I don't know as much about as a student in class that knows more than me, I'll let them drive. I'll let them co-teach with me because they know more about that experience than I do. And a lot of educators have to just get out of the way, let their voices be heard because they have power, and that could help for the future of our country.
Absolutely. Love that. Love that. All right. So Desiree.
Okay. Hopefully you can still hear me. Okay. I had to move to the car. It was loud outside the library. But one of the things I was thinking of is creating that cultural responsive pedagogy in your classroom and just making sure that kind of definitely piggybacking on what Janae said, and that is making sure that you do have that safe space and making sure that all cultures can be represented without being scrutinized, without being, just having a safe space. And that, I think, is what leads to what Terrence is talking about, where the students do feel that they can have advocacy and that they can fight for themselves. I think the more we suppress our students and the more that we, education hasn't changed that much, and we're still in that industrial model where it's, follow the leader, follow the leader, follow the leader. And the more we can kind of break them of that pattern and break them of that mindset where, you need to question, you need to advocate, you need to be that person that stands up. I think the more that we do that in the classroom and the more that we follow that culture responsive pedagogy model, the more we allow our students to use their voice. Because I know student voice is one of those things, you know, one of those buzzwords. We always have these buzzwords that come out. It's a good buzzword, but it's still one of those, you know, buzzwords. And, you know, what I like to say is you don't give students a voice. Students already have a voice. You're not giving it. You're not like saying, oh, here's your voice. They already have a voice. We just need to promote them using it and allow them to use it and encourage them to use it. So there you go.
Love it. Love it. All right, cool. Let's go to Katie.
Just if we want the kiddos to be empathetic and whatnot, we also have to help them see why they need to have empathy. So if we're bringing in content, having an opinion about an event that they know nothing about, it's kind of hard and it'll be superficial. But if I bring in images of something or bring in a virtual reality component, then they're immersed in it and see it. They don't need to like read a bunch of boring articles and whatnot, but to have that visual of what others are going through, that impacts them. And after seeing that, now they can come to a decision about what those people or that individual would need. They have the great ideas, just like Terrence said earlier, get out of their way and the students will tell you what they can and should do for helping those others.
Absolutely. So definitely, you know, bringing in that content, but also getting out of their way. So totally, because yeah, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. So absolutely. All right. So switching gears to the next question. So this was the question that originally inspired this episode. So it might be kind of switching gears, or it might not. You know, it might be a good tie-in. So the question is, what's the difference between empathy and charity? And we already talked about the difference between empathy and sympathy, but what's the difference between empathy and charity? And I'll give a little bit more context. My mom wrote an article, so I tweeted it out. I set it up to tweet out at 6:15, where she had, she told a story of her youth. So I tweeted it out, so I'm not going to spoil the story. So if y'all wanted to check it out, then it's coming out from my account, not from EduMatch. But I just felt that was just something that stuck with me. It was like a sticky message. So Desiree, what are your thoughts?
Well, I have two kind of different thoughts about that. One is I feel like empathy could lead to charity, because I don't want to downplay charity and make it sound like a negative or anything. But I think empathy can lead to charity. But I also think that charity can also be that surface level. Again, it depends on what you do with charity. But I do think charity can also be that surface level of a Band-Aid where, okay, well, you know, you need something, I'll just go donate something and I'm done. I don't want to go any deeper than that. Now, again, there's different levels to charity, because I mean, charity could be volunteering and getting all knee deep into the situation and really wanting to empathize, and really, so it just depends on the level of charity that we're discussing.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. Great. Would anyone else like to pop in on this one? All right, Terrence.
What I was going to say is charity, empathy goes back to action. And like, oh my God, my mind just went blank. Desiree said, I apologize, Desiree. What she said was charity can be surface level. And when I think of charity, it doesn't have to be fiscal charity. Charity can be, for example, helping a person across the street who's blind. That is charity. I think charity is all about taking your time to help someone. That is solid charity. It doesn't have to be a penny. Volunteering in a soup kitchen is charity. Helping a student who's being bullied, that's charity. And it's also empathy. So they each can go hand in hand, because if the stronger the person's relationships are, the stronger the empathy would be. And then the charity would be the ultimate result of that. All of those can be surface level, or they can go as deep as the whole allows them to go.
Cool. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right. Awesome. We'll go next to Katie.
Between charity and empathy, I think a big difference would be your motive. What's your driving force behind it? Are you being charitable and donating a lot of your time and being there and have that follow through? Or are you doing a quick, I'm writing a check because I can, and I want to say I helped those people for like bragging rights later? So why you're doing something is always going to matter.
Sorry, I was typing as I heard you, and I was just definitely saying that motive is a big factor. I agree with that as well. All right, so Jernay.
I also think empathy is just that feeling that pulls at your heartstrings because you've also been through it. So like, for example, many of you who know me know I've gone through Hurricane Katrina. And so, you know, just having that experience of walking through water with bags over my head, I'm more empathetic when others are going through that exact same situation because I know what it feels like. You know, so I think when it comes to empathy versus charity, and it's not that one is different than the other, I think it's more so of a feeling, a deeper connection that you have to someone else who is going through some of the same things that either you have gone through. So that's the lens that I'm looking at through empathy and charity. Definitely charity is the action that goes along with it. You can have empathy without charity, and then you can have it side by side. So so yeah, that's a very good question, Sarah, to ponder about. And I'll be thinking about that even more.
All right, cool. That is awesome. Thank you all so much for your responses. So absolutely. And I'm also kind of deconstructing it in my mind. But for me, I agree with what you all said. I think that also the why is a huge part in my answer as well. And like for me, empathy feels like we're in this together, you know, like we're all one. Charity, like y'all said, and you all really touched upon it, then sometimes it can have empathy with it and sometimes it doesn't. So definitely going back to what Katie said about the motivation, it really resonated with me. All right, cool beans. So last question, anything else you'd like to share? So Michael, we'll come to you first.
Yeah, I know I didn't really chime in on charity because everyone had such great things to say. But, you know, I was just thinking about it now as you were speaking, and I'm thinking, you know, charity can potentially fuel empathy and empathy can fuel charity. It can kind of work in both directions. So definitely a lot to ponder and think about and reflect on. Just as far as just any last things to share, I know I don't want to promote things, but this book right here, it's not my book. It's by Sean Robinson. Senior_tutor on Twitter, connections-based learning. I'm just digging into this now, and there's a CBL chat going on Twitter. It's a slow chat, and I am just like blown away by the projects. I mean, we talked about the water crisis, we talked about the global goals. It's just there's some amazing stories in this book, and just some actionable steps as teachers is how we can have more empathy in our classrooms. And another tool that I'm using is Empatico. Right now, it's aimed at just 8 to 10-year-old students. It's sponsored by the Kind Foundation, but it's just been phenomenal for our learners to have those exchanges and those connections right there, all within that platform. It's definitely, and their hashtag is Spark Empathy. So, and really, if you search the hashtag Spark Empathy, you'll see some neat things happening in classrooms that are involved in that project, and just in general around education.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Cool. Anybody else have any concluding thoughts? All right. Well, in that case, just wanted to thank all of you for just an amazing conversation. Thank you all so much for sharing your thoughts and your insights. I think that my one concluding thought, once again, is that, you know, we are all in this together, you know, this thing called life. And to paraphrase Prince, right? But we're all in this together. So, you know, I think that that's what gets to the crux of empathy and just really just seeing each other, you know, seeing each other as fellow human beings, that we all have something to contribute. We all have something to share. We all have challenges. We all hurt. We all feel. We all, you know, there's just so much that makes us human beings, and just recognizing that humanness in other people that we come across in our life. To me, that's the definition of empathy. So so we're going to go ahead and wrap this bad boy up and put a bow on it. So definitely wanted to thank everybody tonight for just your amazing insight, and you know, tune in. Not next week and not the week after that. We are actually going to take a quick break for ICE 18, and then the following weekend, traveling back from ESET 2. So join us on the 10th. We're going to have back-to-back episodes, 11 Eastern, 12 Eastern. So we're having Michael back at 11. And then we will also have Eagle Eyes, OFOA, on at 12. And then we're going to have another Tweet and Talk featuring Akila Ellison, who will be moderating for us and on Sunday, the 11th at 6 p.m. Eastern. So yeah, if you want to be on panel, podcasts.edumatch.org/sign up. And the topic will be teacher well-being and joy. So everybody take it easy. Thank you so much, and have a great one.